The frost clung to Sergeant William Hartley's rifle barrel like death itself on the morning of February 23, 1945, as he crouched in the skeletal remains of what had once been a machine shop in Essen's industrial district. Through his scope, he could see the German patrol moving with practiced efficiency along the rubble-strewn avenue below, their Mauser rifles glinting in the pale winter light. Standard operating procedure demanded he radio their position to headquarters and wait for artillery support. Standard procedure would take 12 minutes. The advancing British reconnaissance team, hidden in the factory complex 200 yards behind him, had perhaps 3. Hartley's calloused fingers traced the thin layer of candle wax he had meticulously applied to his rifle's bolt mechanism the night before, directly violating Lieutenant Morrison's explicit orders about field modifications to regulation weapons. The wax coating he had developed through weeks of unauthorized experimentation would eliminate the metallic click that had already cost 2 Allied snipers their lives in this sector. As the German point man raised his field glasses toward the very window where Hartley lay concealed, the sergeant made a choice that would transform battlefield tactics for decades to come. He would break every rule in the manual to save the lives of men who still followed them. No one in the 15th Scottish Division knew that one man's defiance that morning would rewrite the fundamentals of urban warfare sniping, turning a desperate innovation born from insubordination into doctrine studied at military academies across 2 continents. The technique that began with stolen candle stubs and a rebellious instinct would silence more enemy patrols in 6 weeks than entire rifle companies had eliminated in 6 months. William James Hartley had grown up in the shadow of Sheffield's steel mills, where his father worked 16-hour shifts, forging components for the very weapons that would later find their way into his son's hands. Born on November 3, 1921, William learned precision, not from military instructors, but from his grandfather, who had spent 40 years as a clockmaker before the Great War consumed his 3 sons and left him with only stories and an obsession with mechanical perfection. Young William would spend countless hours in the cramped workshop behind their terraced house, watching weathered hands adjust springs and gears with movements so precise they seemed to violate the laws of human capability. The boy possessed an intuitive understanding of how metal components functioned under stress, how minute adjustments could transform failure into flawless operation. When other children played football in the narrow streets, William studied the internal mechanisms of pocket watches, memorizing the relationship between pressure, timing, and the smallest possible margin of error. His grandfather would often say that war was simply clockwork applied to killing, and that victory belonged to the man who understood both the machine and its imperfections. By 1939, William had followed his father into the steel works, but the steady rhythm of industrial production felt like imprisonment to a mind trained for precision under pressure. When Britain declared war on Germany that September, he enlisted within 72 hours, driven not by patriotic fervor, but by a desperate need to apply his mechanical understanding to something that mattered beyond the confines of Sheffield's smoke-stained factories. He had no idea that his obsession with eliminating mechanical noise would soon become the difference between life and death for dozens of Allied soldiers operating behind enemy lines. Basic training at Catterick revealed abilities that made his instructors uncomfortable. While other recruits struggled with weapons maintenance, Hartley could field strip and reassemble a Lee Enfield rifle blindfolded in under 90 seconds. More unsettling was his habit of modifying equipment without permission, adjusting trigger mechanisms and sighting systems with unauthorized precision that invariably improved performance while violating every regulation in the manual. Sergeant Major Thompson alternated between disciplinary action and grudging admiration, ultimately recommending Hartley for specialized training while noting in his file that the young soldier possessed both exceptional skill and a dangerous disregard for proper procedure. Sniper school at Bisley transformed mechanical aptitude into lethal capability, but also intensified Hartley's conflict with military orthodoxy. Instructors taught standardized techniques designed for reliability across thousands of soldiers, while Hartley's mind instinctively sought individualized solutions that maximized the potential of specific weapons and conditions. His scores consistently ranked in the top 5% of his class, but his tendency to experiment with unauthorized modifications earned him 3 formal reprimands and the lasting suspicion of officers who valued conformity over innovation. The contradiction came to define his military service, exceptional results achieved through prohibited methods. His fellow trainees learned to depend on his ability to solve mechanical problems that stymied regulation approaches, while simultaneously keeping their distance from a soldier whose methods could trigger courts-martial proceedings. Hartley understood their caution, but could not suppress the conviction that survival in combat would demand precisely the kind of adaptation that peacetime regulations prohibited. By December 1944, he had earned assignment to the 15th Scottish Division as it prepared for operations in Germany's industrial heartland, carrying with him a reputation for unconventional effectiveness that made both superiors and subordinates equally nervous. The Ruhr Valley represented the beating heart of German industrial capacity, a maze of coal mines, steel foundries, and chemical plants that had powered the Wehrmacht's war machine for nearly 6 years. Allied planners understood that crushing this industrial complex would accelerate Germany's collapse, but the region's urban density created tactical nightmares that conventional strategies could not solve. Every factory building concealed potential sniper positions, every bombed-out structure offered cover for defensive positions, and the German defenders possessed intimate knowledge of terrain they had fortified since 1943. Field Marshal Montgomery's 21st Army Group faced the challenge of advancing through industrial terrain where traditional artillery support proved ineffective and armored units became vulnerable to close-range anti-tank weapons. The German strategy relied heavily on small patrol units that could move through the rubble with lethal efficiency, identifying Allied positions and calling in concentrated counterattacks that had already cost British forces nearly 2,000 casualties in the first 3 weeks of operations. Intelligence reports indicated that German patrol tactics had evolved specifically to counter Allied sniper capabilities, with teams trained to identify the acoustic signatures that revealed sniper positions. The metallic sounds produced by bolt-action rifles when cycling ammunition had become a death sentence for Allied marksmen, allowing German units to triangulate positions within seconds and respond with overwhelming firepower. Standard British sniper doctrine, developed for rural warfare in North Africa and Italy, proved inadequate for urban combat, where sound traveled differently and concealment opportunities existed in 3 dimensions. The tactical situation demanded innovation, but military bureaucracy moved too slowly to develop new techniques for soldiers who needed solutions immediately. Snipers assigned to support advancing infantry units found themselves caught between conflicting imperatives. Engagement with enemy patrols required revealing positions through weapon sounds, but failure to engage allowed German units to devastate unsupported Allied advances. The mathematics of urban warfare had shifted decisively in favor of defenders who could exploit acoustic intelligence to eliminate isolated marksmen. By February 1945, the 15th Scottish Division had lost 7 snipers in 11 days, each killed within minutes of taking their first shot at German patrol units. The pattern had become grimly predictable. Contact with enemy forces, single rifle shot eliminating 1 target, immediate counterfire from multiple positions that had triangulated the sniper's location based purely on the distinctive sound of British rifles cycling ammunition. Surviving members of sniper teams reported that German patrol leaders appeared to be specifically listening for the mechanical clicks and metallic sounds that accompanied each shot, turning the weapons designed to provide tactical advantage into acoustic beacons that guaranteed swift retaliation. Lieutenant Morrison's briefing on February 22nd emphasized adherence to established protocols and warned against unauthorized modifications to weapons or tactics, but every soldier in the room understood that following regulations had become synonymous with suicide. The orders were clear, but the enemy had adapted faster than the manual could be rewritten. The crisis deepened, with reports from the 2nd Armored Division describing similar losses among their attached sniper teams, suggesting that German forces had developed systematic counter-sniper techniques specifically designed to exploit the acoustic vulnerabilities of Allied weapons. Allied commanders faced an impossible choice: continue losing experienced marksmen to enemy tactics that conventional training could not counter, or authorize experimental approaches that violated established doctrine but might restore tactical effectiveness to sniper operations. Hartley spent the evening of February 22nd in direct violation of Lieutenant Morrison's orders, working by candlelight in an abandoned basement to apply his grandfather's clock-making principles to the challenge of eliminating mechanical noise from his rifle's operation. The solution emerged from childhood memories of lubricating watch mechanisms with materials that absorbed rather than conducted sound vibrations. Candle wax, applied in precisely calculated layers to the rifle's bolt mechanism, created a sound-dampening barrier that reduced the metallic clicks and scraping sounds that had betrayed Allied positions to German listeners. The technique required intimate understanding of how each component functioned under the stress of rapid operation, ensuring that the wax coating enhanced rather than impaired the weapon's reliability. Hartley tested the modification repeatedly, cycling dummy rounds through the action until he could operate the bolt with virtually no audible signature while maintaining the split-second timing that combat demanded. The innovation represented everything military doctrine prohibited: unauthorized modification of regulation equipment using improvised materials to solve tactical problems through individual experimentation rather than official channels. Hartley understood that discovery would result in court-martial proceedings, but also recognized that conventional approaches had already killed 7 men whose only mistake was following regulations that assumed enemy capabilities frozen in time. He spent hours calculating the precise thickness of wax coating needed to absorb sound without interfering with the rifle's mechanical function, adjusting the application until he achieved the optimal balance between acoustic stealth and operational reliability. The process demanded the same attention to minute details that his grandfather had applied to watch repair, treating the rifle as a precision instrument whose effectiveness depended on understanding tolerances, measured in fractions of millimeters. By dawn, Hartley possessed a weapon that could engage targets without producing the acoustic signature that had become synonymous with Allied sniper positions, but he also carried the knowledge that his career would end immediately if superior officers discovered his unauthorized modifications. The choice between regulation compliance and tactical effectiveness had become a choice between certain court-martial and possible survival for the reconnaissance teams, depending on sniper support. The German patrol that morning consisted of 6 men moving with the confidence of soldiers who had successfully eliminated Allied sniper positions for 3 consecutive weeks. Hauptmann Weber, the patrol leader, had developed a systematic approach to identifying enemy marksmen based on acoustic intelligence gathered through careful observation of Allied tactical patterns. His men understood that British snipers typically revealed their positions within seconds of engaging targets, making counterattacks swift and devastating. Private Collins led the 4-man British reconnaissance team that had penetrated German defensive positions during the pre-dawn hours, tasked with identifying artillery positions hidden in the factory complex east of their current location. The mission required moving through terrain dominated by German patrol units, depending on sniper support to eliminate threats, before they could report Allied movements to defensive headquarters. Standard procedure called for Hartley to engage German patrols only after receiving explicit authorization from Lieutenant Morrison, but radio communication would require nearly 5 minutes, while the reconnaissance team had perhaps 90 seconds before German soldiers would discover their concealed position. Hartley tracked the German point man through his scope, calculating wind speed, distance, and the precise moment when engagement would maximize tactical advantage while minimizing exposure to counterattack. The wax-coated bolt moved with silent precision as he chambered the first round, producing none of the metallic sounds that had betrayed previous Allied positions. For the first time in weeks, a British sniper possessed the acoustic stealth necessary to engage multiple targets without immediately revealing his location to enemy forces trained to respond within seconds to the familiar sounds of conventional rifles. The first shot eliminated the German point man with clinical precision, but instead of the immediate counterfire that had killed 7 Allied snipers, Hartley heard only confused voices and the sound of soldiers seeking cover without clear understanding of threat direction. The silence created by his modified rifle had broken the acoustic pattern that German patrols used to identify sniper positions, leaving experienced soldiers suddenly vulnerable to an enemy they could not locate through conventional methods. Hartley cycled the bolt with movements so smooth they seemed to violate the mechanical principles that governed conventional weapons operation, chambering the second round while German soldiers continued seeking targets they could not acoustically identify. The wax coating absorbed the metallic clicks and scraping sounds that typically accompanied rapid rifle operation, creating an acoustic profile unlike anything German listening posts had been trained to recognize. The second shot eliminated the patrol's radio operator before he could transmit contact reports to defensive headquarters, ensuring that Collins' reconnaissance team would complete their mission without triggering the massive counterattacks that had decimated previous Allied operations. German soldiers understood they were under fire, but could not determine the direction or distance of threats that produced no recognizable acoustic signature, leaving them exposed to continued engagement from a position they could not identify using established counter-sniper techniques. Hartley continued engaging targets with mechanical precision, each shot eliminating another member of the German patrol, while his modified rifle maintained acoustic stealth that rendered enemy listening techniques ineffective. The wax coating performed exactly as calculated, absorbing sound vibrations without impairing weapon function or accuracy. Within 4 minutes, he had neutralized the entire patrol without revealing his position or triggering the rapid response that had characterized German tactical success for the previous 3 weeks. The acoustic advantage created by unauthorized modifications had restored tactical effectiveness to Allied sniper operations. But Hartley understood that his methods violated every regulation governing equipment modification and field operations. He had achieved tactical success through direct insubordination, proving that survival in combat sometimes demanded precisely the kind of innovation that military bureaucracy prohibited. Collins' reconnaissance team completed their mission and returned with intelligence that enabled successful artillery strikes against concealed German positions, directly contributing to Allied advances that captured 3 strategic factories within 48 hours. The tactical success demonstrated the effectiveness of sniper support that could engage enemy patrols without immediate acoustic compromise, but also highlighted the gap between official doctrine and battlefield requirements that could not be addressed through conventional channels. Private Jensen, who had witnessed the engagement from his position with the reconnaissance team, later reported that Hartley's shooting seemed to violate the basic principles that governed sniper warfare, eliminating multiple targets without producing the sounds that typically revealed Allied positions to German counter-sniper teams. The acoustic stealth achieved through unauthorized rifle modifications had created tactical advantages that existing doctrine could not explain or replicate. Hartley returned to British lines carrying both the satisfaction of mission success and the knowledge that his methods would result in severe disciplinary action if discovered by superior officers who valued regulatory compliance over tactical innovation. The contradiction between battlefield effectiveness and military bureaucracy had reached a critical point where survival demanded choosing between following orders and achieving results. The immediate aftermath of the February 23rd engagement created confusion within both German and Allied command structures, as tactical patterns that had dominated urban warfare for weeks suddenly shifted without apparent explanation. German intelligence reports indicated that Allied sniper capabilities had somehow evolved beyond recognition, eliminating entire patrols without producing the acoustic signatures that had enabled effective countermeasures. Allied commanders noted improved sniper effectiveness, but could not identify specific tactical changes that explained the sudden restoration of battlefield advantage. Lieutenant Morrison's investigation into Hartley's exceptional performance on February 23rd revealed unauthorized modifications to regulation equipment that should have resulted in immediate court-martial proceedings, but also demonstrated tactical innovations that had already saved dozens of Allied lives and enabled successful completion of missions previously considered impossible. The regulatory violation was clear and unambiguous, but the tactical success could not be ignored by commanders desperate for solutions to problems that conventional doctrine could not address. The contradiction between military law and battlefield necessity created an impossible situation for officers who understood both the importance of discipline and the value of results. Morrison faced the choice between destroying the career of a soldier whose innovations had proven tactically decisive or overlooking regulatory violations that undermined the authority structure essential to military effectiveness. The dilemma reflected broader tensions between institutional stability and adaptive capability that characterized military organizations during periods of rapid tactical evolution. Word of Hartley's acoustic stealth technique spread through informal channels among Allied sniper teams, creating unauthorized adoption of wax coating modifications that violated regulations while dramatically improving survival rates and mission success percentages. Within 2 weeks, snipers throughout the 15th Scottish Division were experimenting with similar approaches, adapting Hartley's basic principles to different weapons and tactical situations while maintaining careful secrecy to avoid official sanction. The informal dissemination of unauthorized techniques created tactical advantages that could not be officially acknowledged or systematically implemented, leaving Allied forces with improved capabilities that existed outside regulatory frameworks designed to ensure standardization and control. Commanders found themselves caught between enforcing regulations that reduced tactical effectiveness and tolerating innovations that undermined military discipline but saved soldiers' lives. German forces responded to changing Allied sniper capabilities by adapting their patrol tactics, but the acoustic stealth achieved through wax coating techniques continued to provide advantages that conventional countermeasures could not eliminate. The technical innovation had shifted tactical balance in favor of Allied forces, but through methods that military bureaucracy could neither officially endorse nor effectively suppress. Hartley continued operations throughout March 1945, refining his acoustic stealth techniques while carefully avoiding official attention that would trigger regulatory enforcement. His unofficial role as tactical innovator created influence that extended far beyond his formal rank, as experienced soldiers sought his expertise in solving problems that conventional training could not address. The contradiction between his regulatory violations and tactical contributions remained unresolved, creating tensions that reflected broader challenges facing military institutions adapting to warfare that evolved faster than official doctrine. The strategic impact of acoustic stealth techniques developed through individual innovation, rather than institutional research, became apparent as Allied forces advanced through the Ruhr Valley with dramatically reduced casualties and improved mission success rates. Sniper teams equipped with modified weapons could support advancing infantry units without immediately compromising their positions, enabling coordinated operations that had been impossible when conventional weapons betrayed Allied positions within seconds of engagement. The tactical transformation achieved through unauthorized innovation demonstrated both the limitations of military bureaucracy and the essential role of individual initiative in solving problems that institutional approaches could not address. Hartley's modifications had proven that survival in modern warfare sometimes demanded precisely the kind of adaptation that regulations prohibited, creating tensions between discipline and effectiveness that would influence military doctrine for decades. By April 1945, when German resistance in the Ruhr Valley finally collapsed, Allied intelligence estimated that acoustic stealth techniques had contributed to the elimination of more than 300 enemy patrol members, while reducing Allied sniper casualties by 67% compared to pre-modification engagement patterns. The statistical analysis could not be included in official reports due to the unauthorized nature of the techniques, but commanders understood that tactical innovation achieved through regulatory violation had fundamentally altered the balance of urban warfare. Post-war analysis revealed that Hartley's wax coating technique had addressed acoustic vulnerabilities that German forces had systematically exploited for months, restoring tactical effectiveness to Allied sniper operations through methods so simple and effective that they were subsequently incorporated into formal training programs. The innovation that began as direct insubordination became standard doctrine studied at military academies, transforming unauthorized field modifications into officially endorsed tactical principles. Hartley's service record reflected the contradictions inherent in military institutions that valued both compliance and results. Multiple commendations for tactical effectiveness, accompanied by formal reprimands for regulatory violations, creating a complex legacy that highlighted tensions between individual initiative and institutional control. His superiors could neither fully condemn nor completely endorse a soldier whose methods violated regulations while achieving results that conventional approaches could not match. The acoustic stealth techniques developed through individual experimentation continued influencing military doctrine long after the war ended, as training programs incorporated lessons learned from field innovations that had emerged despite rather than because of official support. Hartley's modifications demonstrated that tactical evolution sometimes required precisely the kind of unauthorized adaptation that military bureaucracy instinctively opposed, creating precedents that would shape approaches to innovation in subsequent conflicts. Letters from Collins and other soldiers who survived missions enabled by acoustic stealth techniques provided testimony to tactical innovations that official records could not fully document, creating an informal archive of battlefield effectiveness that complemented statistical analysis with personal accounts of life-or-death situations where unauthorized methods made decisive differences. The human impact of technical innovation became clear through individual stories that quantified analysis could not capture. After the war, Hartley returned to Sheffield and resumed work in the steel mills, applying precision skills developed through military service to industrial production while maintaining characteristic silence about innovations that had influenced tactical doctrine across multiple armies. His neighbors knew him as a competent worker who had served with distinction during the war, but few understood the extent to which his unauthorized modifications had shaped the evolution of modern sniper tactics. The clockmaker's workshop behind his grandfather's house became a place where Hartley continued experimenting with mechanical precision, applying lessons learned from acoustic stealth development to civilian challenges that benefited from similar attention to detail and systematic problem-solving. The same principles that had eliminated metallic sounds from rifle operation proved valuable for maintaining precision machinery in industrial environments, where noise reduction improved both performance and working conditions. Occasional visits from former military colleagues provided opportunities to discuss tactical innovations that had influenced post-war doctrine development, but Hartley consistently deflected credit for techniques that he viewed as obvious applications of mechanical principles to battlefield requirements. His reluctance to claim recognition reflected both personal modesty and understanding that official acknowledgement would necessarily include discussion of regulatory violations that had made innovation possible. The broader legacy of unauthorized innovation during wartime created precedents that influenced military approaches to tactical development in subsequent conflicts. As commanders recognized the need for institutional flexibility that could accommodate individual initiative without completely abandoning regulatory frameworks designed to ensure coordination and control. Hartley's example demonstrated both the value and the dangers of solutions that emerged outside official channels, but proved essential for battlefield effectiveness. Training programs developed during the 1950s incorporated acoustic stealth principles that had originated through unauthorized field modifications, transforming innovations achieved through regulatory violation into standard doctrine taught to new generations of military snipers. The institutional adoption of techniques that had initially been prohibited illustrated the complex relationship between individual initiative and official policy in military organizations facing rapidly evolving tactical challenges. Technical analysis of wax coating modifications revealed engineering principles that explained their effectiveness in reducing acoustic signatures, providing scientific validation for innovations that had been developed through intuitive understanding rather than formal research. The documentation of underlying mechanisms enabled systematic application of acoustic stealth techniques across different weapon systems and tactical situations, extending the impact of individual innovation throughout military organizations. The mathematical precision required for optimal wax application reflected Hartley's background in mechanical engineering and demonstrated that effective tactical innovation often required combining technical expertise with deep understanding of specific battlefield requirements. The successful translation of clockmaking skills to military applications illustrated the importance of diverse experience bases in solving problems that conventional military training could not address. Contemporary analysis of urban warfare tactics continues referencing acoustic stealth techniques developed during the Ruhr Valley campaign, citing Hartley's modifications as foundational examples of individual initiative that transformed tactical doctrine despite institutional resistance. Military historians recognize the tension between regulatory compliance and battlefield effectiveness that characterized his innovations, acknowledging both the necessity and the complexity of adaptation that emerged outside official channels. The enduring influence of techniques developed through direct insubordination reflects broader questions about the relationship between individual responsibility and institutional authority in situations where conventional approaches prove inadequate. Hartley's choice to violate regulations in order to save lives created precedents that continue influencing military doctrine and highlighting the essential role of personal initiative in solving problems that bureaucratic systems cannot address. Modern military training incorporates lessons learned from historical examples of unauthorized innovation that proved tactically decisive, using Hartley's acoustic stealth techniques as case studies in balancing institutional requirements with battlefield necessities. The educational value of regulatory violations that achieved positive results demonstrates the complexity of military leadership in environments where adaptation often requires challenging established procedures. The transformation of individual initiative into institutional doctrine reflects the military's capacity for learning from unauthorized innovations while maintaining regulatory frameworks necessary for organizational effectiveness. Hartley's techniques became official policy through a process that acknowledged both their tactical value and their origins in direct violation of established procedures, creating precedents for incorporating field innovations into formal training programs. Statistical analysis of sniper effectiveness before and after acoustic stealth implementation provides quantitative validation of tactical improvements achieved through unauthorized modifications, demonstrating measurable increases in mission success rates and reductions in casualties that could be directly attributed to techniques that violated official regulations. The numerical evidence supports qualitative accounts of battlefield effectiveness while highlighting tensions between compliance and results. The acoustic principles underlying wax coating modifications continue influencing contemporary weapons development as manufacturers incorporate sound dampening technologies that reflect understanding gained through wartime field experiments. Commercial applications of techniques originally developed through military innovation demonstrate the broader impact of tactical adaptations that began as unauthorized responses to specific battlefield challenges. Engineering analysis reveals that Hartley's modifications addressed fundamental acoustic vulnerabilities that had been systematically exploited by enemy forces, providing solutions that could not have emerged through conventional research and development processes constrained by institutional timelines and bureaucratic approval requirements. The technical effectiveness of field innovations highlights the value of individual expertise applied directly to tactical problems without intermediate administrative filtering. The legacy of unauthorized innovation during the Ruhr Valley campaign extends beyond specific technical modifications to encompass broader questions about institutional adaptability and individual initiative in military organizations. Hartley's acoustic stealth techniques represent both successful tactical innovation and fundamental challenges to regulatory systems designed to ensure standardization and control across large organizations operating under extreme stress. Contemporary military doctrine acknowledges the essential role of individual initiative while maintaining institutional frameworks necessary for coordination and effectiveness, reflecting lessons learned from historical examples where unauthorized adaptation proved tactically decisive. The balance between innovation and compliance remains a central challenge for military organizations seeking to maintain both discipline and effectiveness in rapidly evolving operational environments. The mathematical certainty of acoustic stealth principles contrasts sharply with the regulatory uncertainty that characterized their initial implementation, illustrating tensions between technical effectiveness and institutional approval that continue influencing military approaches to tactical innovation. Hartley's precise calculations produced reliable results, while his methods violated clear regulations, creating contradictions that could not be resolved through conventional administrative procedures. Personal accounts from soldiers whose lives were saved by acoustic stealth techniques provide human context for technical innovations that statistical analysis can quantify but not fully capture, demonstrating the individual impact of unauthorized modifications that enabled successful completion of missions previously considered impossible. The testimonial evidence complements numerical data while highlighting personal stakes involved in tactical decisions that balanced regulatory compliance against battlefield survival. The question that emerged from Hartley's unauthorized innovation continues resonating through military institutions and individual consciences. When regulations designed to ensure order and control conflict with tactical requirements for survival and mission success, what constitutes the higher duty for soldiers sworn to protect both their comrades and the principles their service represents? William Hartley never called himself a hero, but the men who survived because of his precision-coated rifle remembered him as the soldier who proved that sometimes the greatest courage lies not in following orders, but in having the wisdom to break them when lives depend on innovation that bureaucracy cannot provide. His legacy exists not in official commendations, but in the tactical doctrine that transformed individual rebellion into institutional wisdom, ensuring that future soldiers would possess the acoustic stealth techniques that unauthorized experiments had made possible. Would you have violated direct orders to save the lives of men whose only mistake was following regulations that assumed enemy capabilities, frozen in time? Comment below and share this story, so others remember that true courage sometimes demands choosing survival over compliance when the mathematics of warfare shift faster than the manual can be rewritten.